Fenbushi and also Longhash. I'm sure you know Emma in Singapore. Great. Yeah, certainly. I think I've known Longhash one way or the other since, the early days. And my primary contact there was Emma. And then, of course, in Singapore, David Lee, who I think was associated with Fenbushi almost since the beginning. And yeah, I've always thought about David as as a sort of cornerstone thinker when it comes to crypto in general. So I've always valued his perspectives. So in terms of my background, I'm a engineering professor at Stanford, and typically I deal with sensitive data like healthcare data. And my goal is to use tools like AI to make good decisions, typically for people's health. But I've been interested in robotics now for a long time. And of course, in healthcare, you cannot give a patient a laptop and tell them you're cured. In many situations, there's a physical component to that. And I've been watching robotics now for many, many years, and I was generally not impressed with robotics software. Sure, you can get a robot to pick up an apple and translate it by 13 centimeters. But when you think about complex tasks like tactics, decisions, integration of information about homes, hospitals, schools, workplaces, then traditional robotics software really was not very impressive. So what I started doing about a year ago is starting to build a new software architecture for robot cognition and decision making. So all the robots we care about are robots that directly interact with humans in hospitals, homes, workplaces, schools. Some of our robots are currently being used in kindergartens in China. We're looking at use cases in the US, in hospitals and in security, in schools and other places. So we write open source software for humanoid and quadruped. And the way we make money as a business is by providing what you might call sort of enterprise cognition. So, like standard enterprise SaaS business model, where people give us money to use our cloud endpoints for thinking. So, if you have a robot and you want to make it smart, you can pull out your credit card and you can start sending data to our endpoints, and we will send you robot commands and we charge per token just like OpenAI does. The other thing we've started to do is rev share deals with Chinese robotics companies, where the Chinese company builds the hardware, we provide the software, and the combination is then sold in international markets like Middle East, Europe, and the US. The benefit for Chinese companies is that many countries are afraid of Chinese humanoid. Why do our voice and video data go to Alibaba Cloud? And by using our software, you end up with a machine that's running open source software. That sort of alleviates fears that some people have of Chinese humanoid. Those are typically structured as rev share deals, where the humanoid, when it's sold, we get some fraction of that. Um, Everything I just told you about is a standard Web 2 business. We make robots smart. But I'm sure you've noticed that most of our investors are crypto investors like Pantera, except, of course, for Sequoia China, Neil at HSG. And the reason they invested is because they have significant investment in Chinese robotics companies. And of course, it's important for them for there to be good tools that allow Chinese companies to globally sell their robots. Um, the other long-term, well, that's really up to them. They can certainly have their name on the hardware, but the data and the processing happens on our servers with our software. So uh, the branding for the humanoid we're currently selling with Unitree and RoboStore is the hardware has the Unitree logo, but the data fusion, decision making is taking place in our cloud. And so we're very flexible on how that's branded and things like that. And for us, all of this is really just step one. One thing that we are almost certain will happen is that robots will need to transact with other robots or humans, and that gets us into payment systems. And that's why in our software, we've already built in payment infrastructure from Coinbase and from Circle. And the system of charging stations we're starting to deploy in San Francisco for humanoids is based on our collaboration with Circle, where the humanoids can use stablecoin USDC to pay for electricity when they need to recharge. That is a geolocation gated stablecoin payment system for autonomous humanoids. That's why we work with people like Circle and Tether and Coinbase. The other part of this is that many aspects of robotic software still involve humans, although that's decreasing very quickly. For example, for specialized tasks like electricians, nurses, healthcare workers, math teachers, we're still in a phase where humans are needed to make the software better. And we think there's an interesting opportunity for crowdsourced improvement of robot performance. This is very similar to what OpenAI does. I'm sure when you've used OpenAI, you've seen that it gives you a little thumbs up, thumbs down for every output of the model. We're building a similar system where humans can provide thumbs up, thumbs down feedback on robots performing complex tasks. That app has more than 100,000 users right now, and they're currently earning points and they're getting little badges. So we're starting to engage with a large number of humans using an app to help refine our robot capabilities. The other area that we care about is the coordination. How do you get large numbers of machines to coordinate? And we think a large part of this coordination is going to involve money. And we think robots are just like agents, primarily going to use crypto to do that. Just because it's incredibly fast, efficient, easy, and no one asks the robot for their passport, which of course they don't have. And that's why we care about machine-machine coordination and financial systems. So strategically, what we're most interested in is what you might call the financial architecture of the machine economy. And that's a system where machines and humans work together to jointly accomplish particular tasks. And as a Web 2 company that works with big tech companies and hospitals and NVIDIA and car companies and stuff like that, what we've decided to do is to spin out the Web3 side. And the Web3 side will be spearheaded by a Cayman Foundation, which is preparing to move very quickly as it relates to building the machine economy with associated model optimization tasks with humans that help machines get better, with specialized payment infrastructure like what we're building with Circle, and also confidential compute like what we're building with Near, with Ilya at Near.ai, among other people. So we really see this as a major opportunity for blockchains and crypto, simply because for intelligent machines, there are no good alternatives. And that is the sort of Web3 side of things. I represent the Web2 side, OpenMind. But of course, I'm also involved on the foundation side as the architect or whatever you want to call it. But I can certainly connect you with people on the foundation side and their own 38-day to TGE countdown and all the other things that they're currently doing. Yeah, exactly. People help make the machines better and they earn token. So what we do not do is IP licensing, sharing of any of this. This is a straightforward, you want to help a machine learn a new skill. You can earn token. Very simple. The other part is that there's special infrastructure that machines need. The most obvious example is this press release that came out last week with Circle, this charging system for humanoids based on USDC, and also the confidential computing, like what we're doing with Near. So there's a confidential computing angle, computing infrastructure, making that accessible. There is no way to decentralize that, technically impossible. There's no way you can decentralize in any known scalable, useful way model training. But what you can do is certainly provision services like confidential compute, where people have to run specialized hardware like H100s or H200s. So the decentralization is at the level at finding those resources and using them, as opposed to decentralizing inference or model training itself. And then, yeah, so those are just a few directions there. Um, I have never worked directly with Fenbushi on I've never had Fenbushi on a cap table. So I don't have experience with that side, but I certainly have fond memories of many conversations with David and also with Emma. Yes. We're making money. Our revenue has gone from 0 to 60,000 a month in 4 weeks. So people are starting to use our endpoints. We're getting also traction for some of the robot simulation software that we're building that allows people to optimize robot performance in complex social environments. So in the past, when you trained robots, you had like a factory, but that's not what we care about. We care about situations where robots interact with humans and pets and these complex dynamic social environments. So the way our simulator looks is much more like Minecraft, much more like a game than a iPhone assembly manufacturing workflow or something like that. So that side is getting good traction because there really aren't good tools yet. Even NVIDIA's Isaac Sim, it doesn't even support voice. because it's really very manufacturing focused. And then our rev share deal with RoboStore and Unitree, that just went on sale like 2 weeks ago. So we don't have any good numbers there yet. Probably still need another 4 weeks or 6 weeks. Yes, they have that pre-installed, but their likelihood of selling a humanoid with a Chinese operating system is precisely zero. At least not in any quick, scalable way. The structure is Delaware C Corp. Early investors got both equity and token warrant. Future investors like tech companies, they don't care, know, or want token. So that is straight equity. In situations where investors want token, we can certainly have a conversation, but that conversation would have to happen extremely quickly because our ability as a US C Corp to provide a token warrant um, vanishes, of course, once there is a public token and it's traded. Um, on the medium and long-term side, if all you care about is token, then another path is to directly work with the foundation. And they probably have a whole set of things that they're thinking about, things they may raise for, needs they may have as a foundation. Yeah. So we've raised 20 million. And the equity valuation was around 100 million, and the token valuation was 2x of that. And our lead investor for most of that is Pantera, and other big investors are Ribbit and HSG and Pebblebed. And Pebblebed is a straight Web2 fund that was started by one of the founders of OpenAI and the founder of Meta's AI effort. So that's a very tech AI focused fund, Pebblebed, that has never before invested in anything that has any connection to crypto. Yes. Um, that was probably like August. Yeah. Yes, we're currently raising, however, that round may not, the valuation may be too high for most crypto investors. As you know, valuations of like AI and robotics companies are rather high right now. And so we're currently raising 50 million at a 500 million equity valuation. And generally, tech companies do not care or have any understanding of the token side. Um, Now, Fimbushi, of course, is a little bit of a special case because you guys are primarily from the Web3 world. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure you probably also like invest in Figure and OpenAI and stuff like that. I don't know. Um, Yeah, 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 sure. Yeah. Now, we certainly are fortunate that the Delaware C Corp itself, OpenMind, that's like a pure Web 2 tech company. There's a number of banks and investors that have reached out with interesting proposals relating to OpenMind itself, unrelated to the Web3 side. So I agree with you from an investment perspective. It would probably be useful to have exposure to both sides. We're somewhere around 20 people, 20 humans, and they're mostly in San Francisco. We're starting to build out a footprint in Hong Kong. And the reason we're building a footprint in Hong Kong is because essentially all of the Chinese robotics supply chain is in Shenzhen or Hangzhou. And so we just need people there because for our software to work with Chinese hardware, we need engineers to have the hardware in front of them and connect the computers and fix things and test things. So that is driving the Hong Kong footprint. We'll probably have on order of 5 people in Hong Kong. We might end up building a footprint in Dubai. And that's why I was just in Dubai last week. And that would have elements of hardware, manufacturing, plus connections to digital infrastructure that Dubai wants to build out, or Abu Dhabi specifically. Uh, oh, well, hang on. So I'm currently on leave from Stanford. Because I'm CEO of OpenMind. So I'm not allowed to teach and so forth. And that makes sense because otherwise the university would get very confused. As CEO, my role is to lead OpenMind, and that involves the tech, the people, the fundraise, and the strategy. I'm fortunate to have a very good CTO and CFO and more and more very talented engineers. We're currently thin on the marketing and business development, but we have 3 people starting this week. So we're starting to build out the marketing side and also the business development side, mostly focusing on the US. If we establish a footprint in Abu Dhabi or Dubai, I'll move some people there, and the Hong Kong side is separate anyway. It turns out that there's a lot of very talented engineers, either in Hong Kong or China, of course, on the AI and robotics side. So that's also going to be an interesting area to build out a sort of engineering side. He is Peking University mathematician. And I worked with him for a long time now. He's the ultimate. technical Swiss Army knife. So he can build stuff in cloud and AI, machine learning, simulation environments. But of course, these days, as the team is growing, more and more he's spending time just finding other good people and hiring them as opposed to all the coding. Although he's probably still spends far too much time actually in front of a computer doing the actual work. That's Boyuan. No, just the company. So these are people in San Francisco. The foundation is building out its own footprint. But of course, the foundation is going to be there's going to be like marketing, community, brand, events, collaboration, more of those efforts, hackathons, things like that. The Open Mind is going to be the main tech, like DevCo, for the foundation, just like most labs are. We're not called labs, of course, because we're a lot bigger uh, than most labs. But that kind of interaction is very similar to, I'm sure, everything else you've seen. Let's see. The foundation right now is one, two, three, four, five, six, five and a half or six, depending on how you count. Oh, certainly I expect the foundation to very soon be in a good financial position and independent and be able to spin up all the events and efforts and other things they have to do. I mean, there is a public sale coming up. There is like TGE is happening potentially very soon, and there's various events and other things around that. Oh, um, well, we're spending way too little. We're underspending on the company side, primarily because we've been very fortunate that we found like very good engineers that are still relatively inexpensive. Primarily, I think the majority of our team is Chinese. Because they're like very smart and so yeah, our burn rate is too small. So we should be spending a lot more, but so far we've been able to get a lot done with relatively small team. As soon as, yep, 20. Yep. Well, there's certainly many examples of coordination systems for robots, typically in defense and the military sector, as well as in manufacturing, where of course you need all the robot arms not to bump into one another. Um, the robot or machine-machine communication is by far the most sci-fi. The volumes there in the next year will be very small. This is just sci-fi. This is just building things that you've seen like in the Matrix. And that's rate limited by the very small number of general purpose robots that are now deployed globally. There's probably two robots running around in San Francisco right now, and there are robots. And so we don't need a big coordination infrastructure with two robots. Um, But it's very important to us because we think it will be very important in the future, but not right now. The big drivers of volume right now are things like making the models better to make the machines smarter and to and all the other stuff for the near future will be experimental, very small volume. But that's perfectly fine with me. I don't have like a 6 month perspective or something like that. I really have a like longer term view as humans are surrounded by thinking machines. That's obviously a big change in technology. And those machines will want to work with other machines and humans. And so this infrastructure will be needed. And as far as I'm concerned, we should start building that now. I certainly don't want to, in 3 years from now, wake up and not having built it, but someone else built it. Yeah. So the main two things we're seeing in the US at least is revenue from our cloud and rev share deals. And on the crypto side, there's a few, I can't speak for the foundation. Remember, I'm an American professor in America. I will not give you a long distillate of that, but there's some really interesting things that can be done at the on the crypto side. For example, imagine people being able to come together to jointly buy robots. And if those robots then do things and make money, then they can share the profit. So this is a little bit like a crowd-funded robo-taxi type view of the world, where people come together, they buy a revenue-generating resource, and then share the proceeds. That's one of the things that the foundation may experiment with to kind of catalyze deployment of robots into the US, for example. And that would be working with Chinese robotics companies to sort of kickstart the sales. We own it. No. If robots are deployed and they're using our system, we own the data. Well, well, generally, because of the business model as a like Web 2 enterprise SaaS company, of course, the thing that's important to us is that our models are very good and that people pay us to use our models. So the data is how we make our models good. And that's why we're pushing for deployments into real world situations very quickly so we can collect those data. And that's why we're currently giving points to a lot of people that are using our app to grade robot performance. Um, if a company wants to buy data from us, we're certainly happy to have that conversation. That would be a like case by case. Like we're certainly happy to do that. Humanoid and quadruped. Quadruped are a little bit easier, like the one behind me. Um, yeah, because when they fall, they are closer to the ground and they're less likely to damage things. So a lot of the data collection we're doing right now is in fact focused on quadruped and very small humanoids that are about 1 meter high. So probably those will get much faster traction much earlier because people are less afraid. Right now, Everything we're doing involves a partner that deals with the hardware, the shipping, logistics, storage, packaging, repairs. However, we just started selling our first physical thing, which is an add-on that snaps onto the back of robots. It's called a brain pack. And you can think about this as a modular head for a humanoid that combines sensors, cloud, cognition, memory, and snaps onto lots and lots of different humanoids. Um, right now, we're figuring out what the sort of market size is and who will buy these things first. And depending on how that goes, um, we might end up working with a like white labeling company in Shenzhen to make our own hardware. And that would mean we would get also involved in the physical side. So this would be a little bit like Helium, of course, that sells its own cell communication infrastructure. In our case, it would be similar. There's also like communications going on, obviously, but there's also a compute component and stuff like that. So but the most important thing is that there's like dozens of opportunities in AI and robotics and crypto. And if we try to do all those things, of course, we're going to fail and we would go crazy. So the things we're focusing on right now is get robots in the real world, build great models, and people give us money for that. That's awesome. And then on the Web3 side is to work with like Circle, Tether, Coinbase, Near, and others to start making it easier and easier and easier for autonomous machines to have access to all the resources they need. Yeah. Well, each one of the robots has a big computer, typically an NVIDIA Thor with 128 gigs of GPU. And we have various models running locally so that if there are latency issues or other issues, basically the way the system works is that there's two brains. There's one brain locally and there's one brain in the cloud. And at every time t, the system evaluates which brain is better and faster and uses that information. And that means if the humanoid goes into the elevator and the elevator doors close, clunk, then in that moment, 100% of the compute is being done locally. When the elevator doors open, then the system goes into the state where it's evaluating, is A better, is B better, is A better, is B better? And both of the brains are getting the same inputs, and we, of course, use cloud when we can, simply because cloud is cheaper, more energy efficient, and also smarter because we can run larger models and get faster token generation. But you're absolutely right. Um, our system is not for drone terminal guidance. It's not for ballerina robots that are balancing on their big toe. It's for robots that have a second or two to collect information, make sense of the world, think, and produce outputs. Yes, that's us, our models. Well, no. We, for example, do not deal with elemental movement. We expect if we buy a robot, we expect the robot not to fall over. We expect the robot to know what its battery levels are. We expect the robot to have a good IMU system. We expect the robot to be able to get up and walk and sit down. And that involves the company that builds the robot doing the calibration of all the motors and all the motion policy optimization, the reinforcement learning, all that stuff. So by the time we buy the robot, we expect it to stand up, sit down, walk, jump, run. That comes built in. And then our system is sitting on top of that, collects all the data, does data fusion, does tactics and decision making, and then produces voice, emotion, movement, or other outputs. How is that different? Well, normally what robotics companies do is they're either very assembly focused, which we're not. They're either very like there's some robotics companies, when you talk to them, it's hands, 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 the hands, the fingers, the hands. And for those companies, they care about things like chopping onions or assembling iPhones or mopping your floor. We don't do that. And so a lot of the software is for those mechanical only tasks. We're pretty much the only software that does tactics and decision making in complex environments with people and animals and things like that. So we're much more interested in schools, hospitals, workplaces. People could certainly use our system for the military as well, because our robots are good at assembling information and even being creative and smart and devious. And that's not a skill that a normal like assembly arm has that is picking up something and moving it on a table. The numbers I've seen are something like, 13%, 10 to 13%, something like that. No, they're about 10,000, 10 to 40,000. Well, it turns out that there are thousands of people who really would want a smart humanoid in their house, and if it costs 2 ETH, they're okay. Sure. It really depends on, I mean, if you're like a standard tech company like NVIDIA, you don't want tokens. Uh, and for like lots of different reasons. If you're Coinbase, well, of course you want token. And so those are just because we operate in like the Web3 world and the Web2 world. I think all those conversations are like relatively bespoke. It kind of depends on what you're looking for. Well, that investment was tiny. And I taught a class with Nicholas, the founder of Pi Network, many, many, many years ago. So we taught Beyond Bitcoin together at Stanford. So I know Nicholas. And Nicholas said, "Oh, hey, can we cut a check into OpenMind?" So I was like, "Sure." And I think for them, it was an opportunity to improve their brand. For Nicholas's, oh, that was like the 200 million token. That was like the standard, just like what most of the funds got. Pantera has better numbers. And HSG and Ribbit also have part of that deal is better numbers. But pretty much what everyone else got is that 200 million-ish for the token. Yeah, we have a deck and we have a data room. However, that deck and data room is for US Korean and Taiwanese chip and car companies. And there's almost no mention token, Web3, TGE, delivery. It's just not there. So for anything relating to Web3, that's a separate conversation, any kind of information there. But certainly if you want the Web2 strategic raise, deck and data room, we can do that for you. Yeah, sure. And so help me understand though, you're a Cayman fund or a Chinese fund? Cayman. Okay, good. And what kind of check sizes do you typically do? Yeah, the 100 to 1 million, that means you would be the smallest check. I see. Cool. Well, let me first of all, let me get some sleep. It's midnight here. It's almost 1 a.m. So let me go to bed and let me I'll follow up sometime tomorrow. Who is on the foundation side? That's Paige. And she used to be at OKX Ventures. And she's currently in Beijing or Hong Kong, but is also on her way to the US. She'll be probably in US time zone starting tomorrow. Sounds good. Amazing. Okay. Thank you. Good night. Bye. Bye.